Well, thank you very much for being with us, Mayor Cownie. Wonderful presentation here. So you are also, in addition to Mayor of Des Moines, you're the president of ICLEI, major international organization. What's your role as the president? What do you do? How do you work with local governments across the country to bring about more sustainability?
Well, it's not only across the country, obviously it's across the globe. And I think that what we do is try to get our staff and each of us as individuals to reach out to our constituencies, other mayors around the country and other organizations, shall we say, that can unify, our efforts and amplify our voices. As they often have said through the years, if you want to change the world, you got to sing loud. And so I've tried to do that and speak loudly and with fact-based information and lead people, and whether they be other individuals or city governments to implement. We've got what we call ClearPath, a software program to get cities. If you don't know what you're doing and don't know what your circumstances are, it's hard for you to move ahead and rectify that situation. So with ClearPath, you can start analyzing what your sources of greenhouse gas emissions are, what your risks are, and then start implementing, or at least put together a plan, and then look at the cost of the plan and what it'll take to implement, and what will make the greatest effect most quickly to accelerate all the work that we want to do. But moving forward, obviously looking at every aspect, and I sort of mentioned it earlier with our even ADAPT DSM, we not only use the ICLEI tools, but we also are looking at all kinds of aspects around the city of Des Moines that equitably looks at all of our citizens and all of their circumstances, and try to see how we can best improve it, and then share those ideas around the world. Not only what we're doing, but how we do it, how we're measuring it, how we're measuring the success of our plans, and try to accelerate the acceptance of it and get more cities. I mean, just in the state of Iowa, we've got 946 cities, towns, hamlets, villages where people are living. And we're not a highly populated state. I mean, state as a total is a little over 3 million people. But we think working together and trying to reach out and showing each one of those communities, not only that may or may not be members of ICLEI or Conference of Mayors or anything else, but sharing ideas, because these issues, sometimes the U.S. gets very polarized. These aren't political issues. This is science-based stuff that we need to prepare our cities and our constituencies, our citizens and the businesses, to lay foundations that are solid for today, but are going to be good off into the future. And I always like to sort of quote some of the Inuits' words, who would say, we have to look at decisions that we make today. Not only does it benefit today, but how does it affect the seventh generation? And so we have to make long-term decisions that have a positive effect for the outcome for the world for way far into the future.
Excellent. So I want to ask you, you mentioned the political divide. We're just coming out of the midterms. And about 10 years ago, I also spoke with the leader of ICLEI at the time. And at that time, a lot of local governments, especially Republican areas, were withdrawing from ICLEI. The state of Alabama had just banned Agenda 21 and ICLEI participation from any state or local government agency. How do you bring Republican counties, cities, people on board with this? How do you talk about it with people who don't believe climate change is a real problem? How do you talk about it with people who believe sustainable development is a trap to take away freedom, things like that?
Well, I think we have to look at it in a variety of ways. Often, a lot of the solutions also lower cost of living. So, we have to look at it on a financial base, show them how this works. On a science base, give them as much information as we possibly can, to stay away from the often polarizing political front. This is not about politics. This is about the future of our cities. And usually mayors often they overcome those political divides. I mean, we had, you know, Republicans and Democrats on the stage even tonight. And so I think it's that education that we provide that will help immensely to bridge those political gaps that sometimes occur, because it's sort of like healthy fresh water and food sources. Everybody needs it, whether they wear a red shirt or a blue shirt or a green shirt or, quite frankly, no shirt. We all have needs, and we have to be able to supply them, and we have to do it in the most cost-effective and equitable way, and to supply it for all of our citizens. And I think that just going at it that way, rather than, you know, well, you're over here and it's a political issue. This is not. And it's sort of like a pandemic. You know, the science was very clear out there because we knew so little about it, you know, as COVID-19 presented itself in this country. We didn't know how it would mutate, what the mutations would look like, how they would affect. Is it a totally new disease, or is it just a piece of the first one? If you had the original COVID-19, how long are you immune, so to speak, from doing that? If you take a vaccination, how long is that good? We didn't know. And we couldn't let a political divide or political opinion separate us on that. We have to do the same thing and look at the science, look at the information out there, share it, discuss it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on. How do we benefit our citizens? Again, regardless of what color their shirt is.
Very good. And I know you're very busy. It's late, time to go home. But one more question. What are some examples of some concrete policies that you guys think would be helpful, that are kind of can be implemented at the city level in different parts of America or even different parts of the world?
Policies that could be, well, I think we all have to sort of do what we're doing in Des Moines. How do we adapt our programs to benefit everybody, from food sources and resources? How do we lower costs? I mean, we are partnering with, for instance, private sector lenders to incent people to invest in certain aspects to improve their homes and living. Often they'll say, I can't, switch my HVAC system from a gas-fired deal to electric because it's too costly. So we're trying to incent people to do the right thing, and then also get lenders. Even with our incentives, it doesn't cover 100% of it, but nevertheless, how do we get the lenders to look at it and help people improve the performance of their living situation, their homes, their apartments, and then work with owners of, for instance, of residential apartments. How do we get them to improve their performance and to look at it? In the past, they didn't care as they switched from, a whole building using radiant heat, with a boiler in the basement, to putting individual HVAC units in each one, and you control that you want to live at 60 degrees in the winter and 80 degrees in the summer. It'll lower the cost of it. But if you want to live comfortably, how do you do it? And so we, for instance, used sort of baseline studies to look at and benchmark the performance of each of those buildings. 25,000 square feet and up, they're required to do that, to look at what they can do to improve it. And also, we're hopeful that all that information will be public, so that the renters, the people that are going into these places, whether it's a commercial or residential, industrial building, knows the performance of it and can look at that and kind of put that into the calculus of how they make their choices about where they live or where their business is going to expand or how they do it. And So we're trying to, again, get all that information out there, present the data, let people make their decisions. But I think working on those kinds of things helps everybody. Now, I will tell you, I don't know whether you want to even put this online, but some of the people get really angry about it. You know, they don't want to, and I'm not talking about the residents. Sometimes the property owners don't want anybody to know how their buildings perform. You know,
over concerns about privacy or private property rights, or
well, if they realize that their buildings are not the most energy efficient and high performing buildings, and they're going to rent it out to somebody else, either, you know, so many square feet of space in an office building, or turn a whole warehouse over to somebody and rent that out to them, or an apartment, you probably wouldn't want to know that your cost of your heating and cooling is twice what it should be, you know.
Yeah.
And they figure, well, let those people make the decision on how wonderful the property is, or what the rent is, or whatever. But anymore, it's not just the rent, it's the cost of heating and cooling. And sometimes those costs are as much as the rent. I hate to say that, because that would be a lot more. And then, where is it? Where are these properties related? And that's why we're looking at how we zone and where people live and where people work, and, you know, how do they get to and from? Because we're discovering, back to costs, if you live more than, in Iowa, 20 minutes away from where you work, and you're going to drive to and from your office, although, as we heard, it's somewhat mitigated by working remotely. But if you have to live far away from your needs, whether it's your doctor or your grocery store or your gas station or whatever it is, and it's not located nearby, your cost of transportation, given today's majority way they do it with petrol, is going to be as much as your house payment. And so that's a little scary for some people. They're going, whoa, I didn't know that.
Wow, fascinating. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. Anything else that I didn't ask you about that you really want to mention to American audience?
Can't think of anything. It's just that, you know, we all got to work together. This is an imperative. This is something we have to do, to work together on the climate issues, lower costs of living, and protect this planet for future generations, so that we have all the necessities that we need: food, water, jobs, clothing, everything else, not only that's affordable, but that's available. And hopefully we can keep this planet inhabitable for the next 5,000 years. Here we are in a country in Egypt that celebrates all those generations and centuries of evolution, so to speak, in what they were and what they are today. Let's hope that we can reflect back on that, and future generations will, like we are, as we look back, that 5,000 years from now they say they made the right decision. This planet is still inhabitable, and they understood the risks. They took them into account, they looked at the solutions, and they did what was necessary to preserve the inhabitability of this planet.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.